What you gonna talk about?
Taco and Tech.
Man, I'm the king. Yeah, I'm the king. I'm the king of almost everything. I got it all. I got it all. All except for one fine thing. That thing is you and me. It's you and me. What does it mean to be the king? If you ain't got just what you need, a junkie star with no guitar. And you got the papers but got no weed. I still want you, you don't want me. It's you and me. I may never
Okay, welcome again to, well, I say again, but anyway, Taco and Tech, episode 1. I'm your host, Jeff Brunson, El Jefe, B-Run. I've got several nicknames. You can call me by either. I will answer to all. And so here we got some guests with us. We got Dustin, Christian, Jack, and Emery here. We're going to be talking Texas Tech football. We're going to talk records, predictions. We're going to talk Big 12 standings and anything else that comes up. So before we get started, let's just introduce everyone. I've got Dustin, if you would. Just tell us who you are, who you're with, and where we can listen.
Yeah, Hefe, thanks for having us. I'm Dustin Wimmer with Tailgate Talks podcast, part of the duo over there, powered by Guns Up Nation. We get out an episode a week. Talking about all the tech sports going on. We usually get that out on Thursdays and Fridays, including YouTube videos. So we'll be competing with you a little bit, but it's all in good fun like usual.
All right, perfect. Christian, what you got?
All right, what's up, everybody? Anytime you get asked to join a show by a member of the Texas Tech Twitter Hall of Fame, you absolutely have to take that opportunity. So I appreciate you having us here at El Jefe. But yeah, my name is Christian Lindberg. I co-host the Red Shirt Rebels podcast with my good friend RP Connor. We're both Texas Tech alum, graduated in 2019. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Red Shirt Rebels. You'll be able to find our personal Twitters there as well. And we are available on all major platforms. We're doing one episode a week on Texas Tech athletics, and we are so excited for football season to start.
Let's go. All right, Jack Bell.
Hey, everyone. How's it going? My name's Jack Bell. I write for Viva the Matadors, and I'm on a podcast with a couple of the guys at Viva the Matadors called Hub City Homers. Our ad is Homers Hub on Twitter. We try and get out an episode a week, and you can listen to us on all major streaming platforms for the podcast. And, of course, you can find us on Twitter at Viva the Matadors or, like I mentioned, Homer's Hub, and follow our articles. And right now, obviously, we're in the thick of football, but obviously we cover all tech sports. So we hope to see y'all soon.
All right, perfect. All right. And in the stat wizard, Emery. What's up?
What's up, everyone? So I'm Emery Lida. Currently, absolutely don't have a podcast I'm hosting, but if you want to check out some basketball content coming up in the next month or so, I'm going to have No Middle Madness being launched back up. If you remember back, that was my good friend Ryan Mainville and I. We launched that podcast about 2 years ago, became Locked On Texas Tech. Some things happened, it's gone, but it's going to be back soon. Going to be covering anything in depth about the Red Raiders on the basketball front. So again, that is at No Middle Madness. If you want to see my own Twitter, you can follow me at Eraser41. In the meantime, kind of see some updates and everything. I'll have some bad football takes about just about everything on there.
All right, perfect. Hey, you know we're excited about basketball season. That is for sure. All right, so let's just tackle it. So what we're going to do, we'll just go through the football schedule, and we're going to make a prediction and just talk about just some things here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the composite record as the official Taco and Tech football record prediction. And we'll see. Maybe Tech will go undefeated. We'll find out here in just a second. So This one's probably quick. Murray State. I have a feeling like I feel like this is probably unanimous, but I don't know. You could tell me wrong. Dustin, what you got? Is that a dub?
It better be. Yeah.
It absolutely better be.
I think we should cover the spread, hit the over, all those things. It should be a nice, I guess you could say, warm-up game, walk-through, dress rehearsal, all those cliche type words to get us going into a big week 2 game.
Perfect. Yeah. Anybody else specific thoughts? I don't want to jump on your toes, but I feel confident that that's going to be unanimous. Week 1 win, first career win for head coach Joey McGuire, and to get his foot in the head in the right direction, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Murray State last year, and the biggest thing for them is their offense was pretty mediocre, even for the Ohio Valley Conference. So
Yeah.
I think if Tech struggles defensively in that game, it's going to be a massive concern. But I think this should be a pretty comfortable win. This isn't an FCS team that's quite as good as some of the ones that Tech has faced in recent years.
Easily. This is definitely the tune-up game for us. Really, all I know about Murray State is Ja Morant. I mean, there's not really much else to talk about here. So it should be a nice, easy confidence booster for the team and get the first win for the Joey McGuire era.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with that. All those points are pretty valid. I have picked Tech in the over in this game. I would pick Tech with the spread. Also, I feel confident in saying that Tech should win this game by at least 5 scores. They should, but we'll see. We've been stumped in the preseason or in the early season before, but I'm confident in saying that Tech should at least win by about 28, 35 points.
Oh, I will take it. All right, Texas Tech. Joe McGuire starts out 1-0. Fan base, it probably couldn't get more excited than it is right now. It's so fun. Okay, game 2. We got Houston coming to our house, coming to Lubbock. Little cocky little bunch down in H-Town. What we feeling? What we feeling?
My podcast partner Brooks said it best. Like, I'm not going to give Houston a lot of credit until they actually beat us for once in a long time. I think it's been at least 4 straight, and since I think 1990 or something like that, since they've won here. So they try to act like they're big and ready for the Big 12 and they're on the same page as us, but you look at it head to head, they're not. And until they show up and do something about it, I'm not too worried about it. And the fact that they should have had us last year, and you saw how mediocre we were last year, and we were able to come back on them and put it on them pretty good by the final score. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in them right now. They don't hold a lot of weight to me.
Yeah, I think this team is definitely one of the best in the group of 5. This game will be very telling for how the rest of our season goes. I think this is a major key game, and it's definitely a must win for the Red Raiders, especially if we want to go bowling in the postseason. This Houston team, they have a lot of former Red Raider cast-offs, like Tajon Henry or Keyshawn Carter. I think we're going to see a heavy dose of them playing back in Lubbock. But we've had this team's number. I think we'll get the win here. And I know Houston's coming in the season ranked 24, and everybody's saying that we have to upset them, but I think we're favored in this game. I don't have the odds in front of me, but I think we are favored at home here.
I know on ESPN, like FPI or whatever, it's 55 to 45 kind of percentage-wise, so just a tad favored.
I want to say I saw a line that had Tech at 2.5 favorite. So anywhere in there, I think this game really comes down to which Houston team shows up in Lubbock. Is it the Houston team we saw in the first half last year that really controlled the game and controlled the time of possession? Or is it the team that showed up in the second half thinking they had already won the game and let us come back to win that game down at NRG? So I really think it comes down to which Houston team shows up. I agree that we're going to see a lot of Dejon Henry and Keyshawn Carter. I expect to see Alex Hogan on defense also. So, I mean, seems like Houston is just kind of our minor league system. It would seem. I don't want to throw too much shade, but that's kind of what I get the gist of. But I really think it really comes down to that. Just which Houston team shows up. Is it the first half team from last year or the second half team from last year? I think that kind of is a big factor on how this game goes.
Yeah, I think you look at what the previous matchups against Tech and Houston have looked like, and really Tech has gone into the last 3 games against them as the worst team. I mean, 2017, Tech was worse than Houston. 2018, they were worse than Houston. 2021, Houston ended up last year, I think it was like 12-2. So like over the course of the season, we've seen it play out to where Tech is the worst team, but they find ways to win every single time. And I can't see this year being any different because, I mean, on paper, this Houston team has a lot of talent. I mean, you guys have mentioned past Red Raiders, you got Deshaun Henry, you've got Keyshawn Carter. Also, you've got Nathaniel Dell coming back, a receiver. He was really good last season. Defensively, I think they've got a fair bit to replace. But I mean, this is a good Houston team. But I mean, until they're able to step up and beat Tech and play a full 4 quarters, I mean, I can't see it happening. And I know that on paper, this is a pretty even game, but I feel like this is the type of game Tech's athleticism will play into their favor. I think the fact that Tech has shown the home field advantage the last few years over Houston. Maybe this will come out to bite me, but I think that's going to be a win for Tech and a pretty decisive one at that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You know, number one, Houston. I mean, come on, let's spell Coug right. You say go Cougs. It's COUG. Let's get with it. Number one. You know, number two. You know, I graduated high school in Houston in spring, and you know, I don't know if you probably heard this, but you know, it's referred to as Cougar High. Like it's not taken seriously. So you know, just for all you Pac-12 people, like adding Houston does not add the Houston market. I can tell you that right now. And so let's you know, a big win for. You know, and then we have some demons, you know, when they wouldn't, you know, allow us to wear white for the, you know, the Celebrate Cotton game a few years. I forgot when it was. That's still on my mind. Like Red Raiders don't forget. Red Raiders don't forget. So we have some demons. I have full faith in Joey McGuire and Tim DeRuyter and Zach Kitley to have an effective game plan, and we have the horses. One thing I'll add, you know, as I say, as here, just as a side note, I do want to at least acknowledge that the roster that Matt Wells is leaving Joe McGuire is far superior than the roster that Matt Wells inherited. So, did Matt Wells have his flaws? Yes. But he, in a similar way that Tubby Smith set up, you know, Country Club, then Matt Wells is setting up Joey McGuire very well. So in saying that, I think the roster nationally is underrated. I think they're superior to Houston. I have that as a dub as well. So that is, we are starting the season 2-0. Okay, game 3, we are going to NC State. What do we got?
Not as confident in this one, FA. I know when we scheduled this game, probably in like 2008, because that's how college football scheduling works. We didn't expect NC State to be a top 15 team like we have now. It's going to be a really tough test for Joey McGuire's first road game in this team. They're bringing back a lot of dudes, and I mean, their quarterback, Leary, is back, and he had an amazing year last year. 3,400 yards, 35 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. Like, that's pretty amazing, just as a quarterback stat line by itself. And then their defense is pretty much returning everybody. They got 8 starters back and then a lot of injured guys that would have been starters. And their defense was already 14th overall last year with those injuries. And so they're bringing a lot back. They're hoping to be a top 10 team and maybe even a little upset in the ACC over there with Clemson. So it's going to be a really, really tough test. And I don't think we're quite ready for that come week 3 as much as they are with all the experience they have coming back.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dustin. This game is looking to be pretty tough. I mean, Devin Leary is getting some serious Heisman love preseason. There are a lot of people picking this team to win the ACC and have a representation in the college football playoff. I don't know if I can quite see that, but for our first road game, coming in year 1, new coach, and coming into this experienced team with an experienced coaching staff, and they've got some dudes in the defense. I'm hearing a lot of NFL talks about their linebacking core, not just one of them, but multiple. So I don't see us having a good chance to get a win here.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. I think the only reason we really haven't heard more about Devin Leary is because of the season that Kenny Pickett had at Pitt last year. So I really feel as though if Kenny Pickett wasn't the Heisman level that he played at last year, then we would have heard a lot more about Devin Leary at North Carolina State. And I just think that while our defense, shockingly, our most inexperienced area right now seems to be our linebacking core. I just think that the North Carolina State offense, with all that they return, and the defense with all they return at North Carolina State, is it's going to be a problem for Tech, and I don't have Tech getting out with a win here.
Yeah, I don't think I can see Tech necessarily winning on merit per se, but there is a couple things with NC State's roster that's worth mentioning. Their secondary had some rough games last year, particularly a game against Miami comes to mind. We saw at the end of the season they had a little bit of a rough game against UNC. They were able to come from behind to win that one. And then the shootout against Wake Forest, all 3 came to mind where their secondary struggled. So when this team has lost games in the past, it's been because their secondary let them down. And in theory, with the Zach Kittley offense, with the amount of weapons Tech has at the receiver position, you would say that's a good matchup. But the flip side is NC State has a lot more experience. They return, I believe it's 7 starters on the defense. You have a lot of guys also coming back from injury from last year. And then, I mean, Devin Leary's the man. You guys have all touched on it. I mean, he's a guy that had almost 7-to-1 turnover ratio from last season. I mean, I think Leary's experience, the fact it's a home game, a home night game at that for State, I think NC State has a little bit too much talent. But I will say this is a good matchup for Tech on paper from a schematic standpoint offensively. I just can't see them having quite enough to come away with a victory against a team that is really good and well put together.
All right, so that makes our official record so far at 2-1. Joey McGuire, if you're watching this, I've got you beating NC State. I just want to throw it out there. I believe. But no, for real, I also had this as a loss, first road game. And it's really more of, like, I could see Tech go, I mean, we don't know, we don't know how it's going, or how the team's going to look, right? But you have to go. History says first-year head coaches struggle, right? And Tech has struggled. So while I'm a consummate homer, I'm unabashedly. My wife will ask me, "Hey, is Tech gonna win?" And every time I say, "Well, they can." If you play the game, in theory, you have a 50-50 chance. It's not true because some teams are better, so their percentage is higher. But just 2 teams playing a 50-50 chance. So, but with the uncertainty, with the first-year head coach, not knowing how the team is going to respond to adversity necessarily, I think it's reasonable to expect a loss here against a very quality opponent. I think it's even possible to let's say we were going to Houston again. I don't know that I would be upset if to expect a loss there. First if that was their first road game is what I'm saying, and so I think that's absolutely fair to say that. But Joey McGuire, if you're watching, I believe in you. I expect to win. So. All right. Okay, so next on the schedule is Texas Tech going to start the season 3-0 when Texas comes to town. Or 3-0 at home, excuse me, that's what I meant to say. 3-0 at home.
Hate to be the down person on this whole YouTube thing, but man, I don't have a lot of faith in this one just because last year's game is so haunting to me. That 70-point game and Bijan Robinson ran as much as he wanted to. And I mean, they made it look easy and they only won 5 games last year. Like, you look on paper record wise, we were better. We had a bowl game and all that. Like, you've been around Tech Twitter and Texas Twitter fights enough to know that gets thrown in the circle going round and round. But until we can have a good game against them, I don't have a lot of faith in it. We haven't won against them at home since 2008. And it hasn't been good. We won there a couple times, but I just don't have a lot of faith. And they haven't been good the last 10 plus years. And we haven't been great either, but we haven't been able to do anything about it. And so kind of like my point with Houston, until we can do something about it, I'm not going to have a huge amount of faith. Do I want to beat them? Obviously. Do I have a lot of faith? Not really.
Yeah, this game is going to be a wild one for sure. I'm going to be in attendance. I'm coming into Lubbock for this weekend to be at this game, and I cannot wait. I mean, I feel like we can talk all episode about hating on this team. I know I can for sure. But this team is definitely one of the biggest question marks and one of the most talked about teams going into this college football season because, I mean, as per usual, every year the hype train is just running full steam ahead in Austin, and it always seems to run off the rails in recent years. And is this the year that Texas will be back? I mean, we just really don't know because on one hand, their skill positions, I think they have the best wide receiver running back duo in the country with Xavier Worthy and Bijan Robinson. I think Bijan Robinson might be the best player in college football. You can make that genuine argument. But at the same time, they have injuries on the offensive line, which is already inexperienced. Their defense has so many question marks. And then you have all this drama surrounding the quarterback battle where they wanted to name Card, and apparently the boosters got in the mix, and all of a sudden the big money man, Quinn Ewers, with the bad hair, is named the starter. And he's basically a true freshman. I know he left high school a year early out of South Lake Carroll to come into Ohio State. So does have a little experience in college, but still a huge unknown. So I don't know, but I'm going to be a homer here. I'm going to say we get the win, and we're going to be storming the field, and we're just going to love this. This is likely Texas's last time to play Tech in Lubbock as a member of the Big 12 Conference, and I want to send them home with a big fat L.
Yeah, I like the sentiment there, but Christian, I'll also be going into Lubbock that weekend, so we definitely need to find a way to get together. I'll say this: I was in attendance in Lubbock the last time that Tech won. I was at the 2008 game. Still to this day, the best college football game I've ever attended. By far, it really hasn't been close. Other games that I've been to, it really hasn't been close. I think in this game, it comes down to, I really like what Dustin said about the 70-point game kind of looming in your head. But to me, even I'll go a step farther and say the last time that Texas played in Lubbock really looms in my head. Tech had that game. They had no excuse to lose that game. And as I love to say, we found a way to lose that game. The sky kick was a horrible coaching decision. And, we can all look back on it and, hindsight's always 20/20. But I really think that it's going to be interesting to see which quarterback starts this game for Texas. I wouldn't be shocked if I saw both quarterbacks for Texas in this game. I wouldn't be shocked if I saw both quarterbacks for Texas in at least the first 4 or 5 just to see who really can, vibe with that broken offensive line that we've mentioned already. I would agree. I think Bijan Robinson is probably one of the best running backs, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. I think when Roschon Johnson gets healthy again, I think that's easily the best 1-2 running back duo in the Big 12. I would put Sroderick and Taj close, but they're not even in the same tier, with all due respect to Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. However, I do think that our defensive line will exploit that offensive line quite well. And I don't think that whoever's under center for Texas will be comfortable at all whatsoever. I would like to go ahead and market my point. Please make this a night game. Whoever picks up the television coverage, please make this a night game, because you will get so many more views. The crowd will be better. And it's just going to be – I would agree. I would think that this is the last time that Texas plays in Lubbock as a member of the Big 12 Conference. So a lasting loss in a night game would just be the icing on the cake for me. I'll go ahead and be that homer as well. I'll pick Tech, but I'll pick them in a similar fashion that we beat Iowa State in. Not quite as long field goal, but I think we only win by 3 points.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go against the grain on that one and pick against Tech. I hate to do it, but look, Tech has come into this matchup the last decade, and at least half the times they've had a team that was fully capable of beating Texas at home. I mean, 2016, both teams missed the bowl. 2014, both teams missed the bowl. 2018, you came one Will Jordan Humphrey catch away from winning that one. 2020, we don't need to talk about that collapse. It just hasn't worked out for Tech at any point. And Joey McGuire comes in. It's a new era. But I think this is one of the few times when Texas has a genuinely better team on paper, to the point where if they lose this game, it would raise significant questions. I will say, if Hudson Card starts this game, and what we saw from him last year is what we see from him this year, then yeah, I would probably pick Tech. But I don't think that Sarkisian is quite that incompetent, even if he has his issues. So I think I just can't pick against Texas in this game, as much as it pains me to say. Like, we've seen a full decade of Tech losing at home to Texas, unfortunately. And I think this is not the year that changes. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope this is a good game for Tech. Certainly, you have the pieces all together. Texas has a weak offensive line. We've seen complete incompetence from them at times last year, and any team that loses to Kansas is capable of losing to anyone. So I'll pick Texas, but I hope anything can happen in this one.
Okay, that makes me the tiebreaker. So what are we going to do? And I'm going to, I'm going to agree with Jack Bell. I think that their offensive line, while talented, they're having to play quite a few freshmen. They just are. I don't have a ton of confidence that Sark is their guy. I just don't. I don't think that he's going to be there. I don't know if he's going to be there when Texas moves to the SEC. And so I am also picking Tech to be 3-0 at home this season. I do agree that it's hard to pick against Texas, right? Because they've had our number. There have been countless seasons where you're like, oh, we have a legitimate chance. And either we've messed it up or we just didn't have the right game plan or whatever happened, and we either get blown out or and especially at home, there's been several games where we've had the lead at home and we've lost it. In 2008 was almost a very similar occurrence. We are very lucky that interception was dropped. So, and that was absolutely the best game I have. Every regular was at that game, right? So, I was obviously there. I actually took my mom, so that's kind of our bond there. And so I see it is hard to pick against Texas. But you know what? This is the first season where they haven't been preseason ranked, at least by the AP. And so you have to see that finally their mystique is wearing off. Like, people aren't just seeing the logo. And
I was shocked
and,
they released that without having Texas ranked.
oh, I was too. Even with all the ridicule, with the entire, and that may have done it. The entire Twitter community just ridiculed them to death. They had to take it, and they just had to accept it. And I think finally they see what everybody else sees: these continual 5-7, 6-6 seasons, and that they have them back. And so my gut feeling is that they are going to struggle. I think Alabama is going to break their will. It is possible there could be a quarterback change. And that offensive line, I have no confidence in their offensive line whatsoever, not at this moment. And so there's no saying that whoever, like Quinn Ewers, is even going to be the starter. If he gets hit enough, he may be injured. He may not even be there for this is what, game 4? And so I don't know, that's just where I'm at. I feel like Houston and NC State will be tougher opponents than Texas. That's where I'm at. Obviously a homer call, but I feel like there's some justification. But in the same vein, like with Emory, it's so hard, so many years. We feel like we had a chance against Texas, and then we just gave it away. So I'm with you. I'm hesitant, but I'm drinking the Joey juice. I'm drinking it. So Texas Tech will be 3-1 as our official record prediction. All right, game 5. We are going to Manhattan. We are at Kansas State. Another thorn in Tech's side.
Yeah, I never feel comfortable playing Kansas State. They never make it either an easy game or a blowout game. They're always tough to play no matter what kind of team they have. I mean, Chris Klieman's kind of turned that around in their recent couple coaching changes. And going into his 4th year, I think they're looking to have a breakout year. They were 8-4 last year, and of course they bring back Deuce Vaughn. So see that name, I already get scared because of how much he can do. He might be so small, but he's so hard to tackle. I mean, last year he had 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns. That's ridiculous for a small running back like that. So I hope we can tackle him, hold him down a little bit better. And of course, they bring in a mobile quarterback, which they kind of like to use better, and Adrian Martinez, who I don't know what year of college football he's in, but he's got to be over it by now. But they should be much better with him at quarterback than the last couple guys they've had. And they returned some good receivers and O-linemen, and they're going to be solid. But I have us pulling off an upset here in Manhattan.
Whoa.
Gave them all the credit, and then I knocked them down and said we're going to beat them.
Wow. Yeah, I think this is going to be a very tough matchup for us. This Kansas State team, we can really honestly thank them for giving us Joe McGuire as head coach. They're the ones who ended Matt Wells' reign here in Lubbock. But yeah, this team has experience all over the board. Dustin, like you're mentioning, Deuce Vaughn next to Bijan Robinson. You can make the argument this guy's the second best running back in college football. This guy's legit. He strikes fear into all of us. Adrian Martinez has all the experience in the world. Obviously at Nebraska, he's struggled a little bit. He's kind of treating the football like a hot potato. But as we saw in week 0 here, might not be his fault. It might be the coaching staff there and the culture in Nebraska that might have been the issues. So we'll see that here. But going into the Little Apple here, I just don't see us getting the win. I think we're going to take a loss in this game.
It's interesting, Dustin, because I also have Tech winning this game in Manhattan. And I'll tell you why. It's just because I don't know what type of quarterback Adrian Martinez is outside of Nebraska. I've seen him for the past 3-4 years just struggle and be terrible. And who knows, it could be the offense that was at Nebraska. It could be the coaching of Scott Frost. I don't know. After last weekend, after Nebraska's game last weekend, I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that it could be the coaching. But I also have Tech winning this one in Manhattan. I think that our defense can really play heavy in the box and limit Deuce Vaughn. If Adrian Martinez can't throw a pass, then I don't see why we can't load the box and kind of limit their rushing game. Also, I feel like Adrian Martinez, a lot of the damage he did was being able to, kind of roll out and create plays, extend plays with his feet. And so I really liked our matchups in the secondary with that as well. I will not diminish the fact that Deuce Vaughn is probably the second best running back in the Big 12, and definitely I would say the second best running back in the country, just next to Bijan Robinson, like you said, Christian. It's going to be a tough one. I just think that their offense is so unproven in the passing game that it's just really going to be hard for them to get anything else going. And that's why I think that Tech can possibly go into Manhattan and pull off a shocker.
Man, I guess I'm just higher on Adrian Martinez than literally anyone in existence, because I see a guy that in Nebraska had really poor supporting cast at times. The offensive system we've seen with Casey Thompson last week was pretty flawed. We've seen quite a bit of evidence that Scott Frost has hindered his development. And yet you look at what he did in 2021, and yes, he made a lot of mistakes. There's no getting around that. I think he had 10 fumbles, 10 interceptions, but the guy was dynamic with the ball in his hands. His passing averaged over 9 yards per attempt over the course of a full season. Like, that's incredible. And you look at some of the accuracy he displays, and when he's on, he's one of the best quarterbacks out there. And so I think he's an improvement from Skylar Thompson. I think Deuce Vaughn, in terms of pure versatility, is probably the most dynamic weapon in the Big 12, one of the most dynamic weapons in the country. And I mean, Kansas State, this is a team that has its weaknesses, certainly on the receiving position, and certainly a little bit of question marks for just how dynamic the offense is going to be. But defensively, they've got a solid front seven, and I just think this is a game that's going to be difficult for Tech to win. I mean, I'm high on Martinez as a quarterback. Maybe that swings things, but I feel like of all the teams that Tech is going to face this year, this might be the one that I feel like is them getting the most overrated. And it's not so much because of what I see from a typical Kansas State teams in the trenches. It's that you've got a backfield that if Martinez can clean things up a little bit, and if Deuce Vaughn continues to stay healthy and continues to be the elite playmaker he is, you're talking about one of the most dynamic backfields out there. And that's difficult to beat, especially when you have the linebacking group that has a lot of experience in it. And when you're going to have to be facing two dynamic weapons, kind of following the back out of the backfield and containing the read option, I just think it's going to be hard for Tech to win this game. So I'll have Kansas State winning, but I do think it'll be close. And if Martinez is as bad as a lot of people think, then I think that'd be enough to sway my opinion.
Oh, wow. I am the tiebreaker again. What am I going to do? I got to take my homer hat off. I had this as a loss. I really did. And so I'm going to stick to that. I will, Joey McGuire, if you're watching, just know that Dustin and Jack Bell, they got your back. And, they believe, but and it's not that I don't believe, obviously, for the same reasons. It's just, I feel like that the talent at K-State this year is pretty strong. And so if, Adrian Martinez is what they think he's going to be, I think they could contend for the Big 12 title. I think it's going to be tough for Tech to go in there and win. I've got us 3-0 at home, beating Houston and Texas, but I do have us losing away. and that may be more of a sense of just being away, not being. I expect the Jones, with all the excitement of the fan base, I expect the Jones to be rocking. Like I think, win or lose, I think it's going to be a fun stadium to be in for the next few years. Just think of the USA as we progressed and we got good. It may not be Final Four stadium, in year one at Joe McGuire, but I think it's going to be closer than the year after Tubby Smith left, and so we will. I just think going that electric environment that I think that we're going to build won't necessarily be there away, and I need to see how the team is going to respond to that, right? Because we don't know. All of this is unknown, and how is the team going to respond? But I think K-State has legitimate talent. I think they have several NFL prospects. I've seen the reports, and the scouts think that they are very well talented. And so Deuce Vaughn is obviously a mess. It's hard to see, behind the. It's not a short joke, but let's just be honest. He's smaller. He's hard to see, and he's hard to tackle. He's maybe a bigger, stronger Jakeem Grant. So we'll. I have it as a loss. I'm kind of apologizing in my reason for having them as a loss, but I do, and that's why. So I'm gonna say we'll be 3-2. And go with it. And Joe McGuire, if you're watching, my apologies. We'll get them next year when they come back to Lubbock. Well, assuming they do, we'll have to see the schedule, right? Because that's going to change. All right, so quick break. Our official Taco and Tech record is 3-2. Would y'all take that right now, regardless of where you got it?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
100%.
For sure.
Absolutely. All right, let's go. Now we got back-to-back away games. We are going to Stillwater. We are facing Oklahoma State. Although I think the mullet is gone. Maybe it's still there. I'm not sure. I know he's doing one-handed push-ups, and they're getting some pub over there in Stillwater, and they're in the running for the Dana Beers fandom. so we've got some competition there. So we'll see. So I don't know. Does Texas Tech have a chance?
Yeah, it's always tough going off two conference back-to-back away games, and I mean our first half of the schedule past Murray State is pretty brutal, to be honest. Like for the top half of the schedule, so ending this top half. With Oklahoma State, who was just in the Big 12 championship. Spencer Sanders I feel like he's like Perry Ellis. He's back again. I feel like the only and I don't have a lot of faith in him. I feel like the only reason he's first team all Big 12 quarterback is because there was a lot of quarterbacks that left, and there's revolving doors a lot of other places. I think there's much more talented quarterbacks across the conference than him. I think he just got he's the only guy left kind of award. But they're bringing back 7 of 8 of their top receivers, and playing at Stillwater is always very tough. They've built up a very solid roster and program over the last 10 years, to be honest. I mean, this is where we hoped we would be, coming out of the Leach years, and we definitely went the wrong direction there. But their defense took a big overhaul. Their D coordinator that had them so great last year went to Ohio State. They brought in the former Vandy head coach as their DC. They lost a lot of players off that great defense last year too. That held us to 0, if you remember. And Donovan Smith couldn't do anything. That was a rough game to watch last year in the Jones for us. But they're going to have to rely more on Spencer Sanders and that offense rather than the defense like they did last year. But I just don't see us quite up to par with them just yet to compete with them.
Yeah, Dustin, I agree with you. We're coming off just a gauntlet to start the schedule here in the first half, and I know I'm drinking out of my Eskimo Joe's cup here. I was at the game in 2018 where we actually got the win in Stillwater. That was pretty crazy. It was a good one to be at, the Alan Bowman game. But unfortunately, I just don't see it going the same way this time. Spencer Sanders, he's first team All Big 12. Not too dissimilar from Adrian Martinez, what we've seen from him as far as turnovers go. But he's got the experience. He's probably the least bit of question mark out of all the starting quarterbacks in this conference. I think this team is going to be really good. Mike Gundy teams always win. And I just don't see this team being an exception. I think they'll likely be or have a representation in the Big 12 title game. I just don't see us getting a win here. I do think we have a better chance in the Dana Beers fandom now of beating Oklahoma State. I do think we get the win there, but just not in Stillwater.
Yeah, my Spencer Sanders hate is just – I think he's just okay is all I think. Like, I don't think he's great or anything. I think he's just an okay quarterback that is fine. I think Adrian Martinez should be a better quarterback than him.
I'll take your hate a step further. I think Spencer Sanders is quite possibly the worst quarterback in the Big 12.
I love this take.
And
Worse than Max Duggan?
It's close. Those are my those are my two bottom ones, actually. So I'll go for a step because the first time I ever saw Spencer Sanders play was in Lubbock, obviously. And I guess it was his redshirt freshman year or his true freshman year. And he had 4 turnovers in the span of like 12 minutes. And he had like 2 fumbles, 2 picks, and it was like on 4 straight possessions. Tech won big that year, and it was a great time. But I will say that I really, truly would agree with the point that Spencer Sanders only got Big 12 like quarterback of the year because no one else really that started the year ended up. Texas had multiple quarterbacks. Tech had multiple quarterbacks. Max Duggan is terrible. I mean, you had Bohannon and Chapin had to come in and win them the game almost, essentially, in the Big 12 championship. Caleb Williams wasn't the starter for OU at the beginning of the year last year. So it kind of really does boil down to, who's left. And so Oklahoma State's in the Big 12 championship. So I got to go with Spencer Sanders. I really do, and I'll stick by that. Those that have read my articles and listened to our pod at all know that I'm probably the biggest Spencer Sanders hater. I just don't think he's really good at all. I don't think that he is really worth anything.
I'll support you, Jack. Don't worry.
I appreciate that. But I just think I with all this hate being spewed and everything, I have to agree with everyone else. I just don't think that Tech goes up to Stillwater and gets a win. It's just something about playing in Stillwater. I would almost throw it into the similar category of Tech playing Texas at home in the last decade. We just find ways to lose ball games, it seems. The last time we played Stillwater still gives me nightmares. Watching an onside kick being returned for a touchdown was just awful. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, honestly. But I just don't feel like even if we do pull off an upset in Manhattan, I just don't see Tech pulling back-to-back road wins in this conference. I just hate to say it, but I just don't think that we have the experience for that or just the team talent overall to complete that.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I look back at the young Spencer Sanders, the one that we saw in 2019 in Lubbock, and it's almost like he's a completely different player now, like the complete opposite. Like then he was a turnover machine, made a lot of dynamic, crazy plays, and then a lot of dumb ones as well. Now it seems like Mike Gundy's basically told him, look, I'm not going to trust you to throw anything further than 15 yards. You only get so many option plays. Give it to your back. Trust him. And it worked for 90% of the season last year outside of the Baylor games at times where he just completely imploded. So, I mean, I have to say, I like this Oklahoma State team. I think on the defensive front seven, they still have a lot of returning talent. This is a team that last year had 314 pressures, which is absurd. That's almost over 25 a game. So, I mean, yes, they lost defensive coordinator, but Derek Mason is a similar coordinator in his ability to get pressure. That's one of the things he was known for at Vanderbilt and before that as a DCU Stanford. And I just think that this Oklahoma State roster, if you ignore the Spencer Sanders talk and focus on everything else, they have a good shot at winning the Big 12. Now, will Spencer Sanders not make mistakes in those one or two critical games? I doubt it. But at the same time, that's really not our discussion because last year we couldn't score a point against them. I think that's going to change this year. I think the Tech is going to be able to at least make a competitive game. But again, it's Stillwater. It's another road game against a good Big 12 team. And I just have to pick against Tech, unfortunately. As much as I would like to join the Spencer Sanders hate bandwagon, I do think that the team around him and this roster is confident enough that they're going to be able to get it done against Tech, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with the consensus here. So no need to go against it necessarily. But I do agree that Spencer Sanders isn't necessarily the ideal Oklahoma State quarterback. I think the fans would prefer someone else. He is very turnover prone. Fortunately, in the past, they've had the defense. Now, and that's a big question mark this year, right? Are they going to be good defensively? They lost their defensive coordinator, and they lost a good portion of their defense. I'm not sure about their offense as far as returning starters, but that is definitely, a question mark. And I guess some hope for Red Raider fans that either want to make the trip or that are doing the similar deal and going through the record and thinking does Tech have a chance? Well, yeah, of course Tech has a chance. Number one, we don't know, and really Tech has a chance in every single game because out of all the years, I think that at least recently that you've kind of looked at the schedule, I think this is the most uncertain about as many teams as you can. We really don't even know. Baylor's probably maybe the preseason pick, but at least from most people that think they're probably going to win, or at least they'll be in the championship game. I think that's fair. But do we really know? How they're going to be now? I think where the Baylor love is coming from is their O-line and D-line. They're legit, I think, and so. I would say they're probably going to be. We'll get to that here later, but there's a good chance they're going to be there. So my point is that I do agree that Tech has a chance to win in Stillwater, just like they did. Like 2018, I believe, was the last victory. I didn't expect that. I'll be honest with you, but they won it, right? And so you just don't know. But based on the uncertainty, and similar to how I've kind of gone is being an away game in general, being our first year with all that uncertainty right here, right now, I also do have that as a loss in spite of, the Spencer Sanders turnover king or whatever you want to call him at that point, and then even not knowing the defense, Now, obviously, this is what, game 6? I think by this point we may have an idea of what these teams are. So obviously that week, if we were to do this again, maybe we have a different answer. Maybe we're more bullish on Tech than we are. We don't know, right? But for here right now, we will officially say that the Taco and Tech predicted record is 3-3. And even at that, the first 6 games, I think it's still a positive direction for Joey McGuire to be headed to at this point. So, okay, so now we get to finally come back home. We got West Virginia, the battle of Country Roads, John Denver's soul, I guess, is coming. What do we got?
Yeah. So we finally get a bye week in there also after that brutal top half of the schedule.
Yep.
So this is a huge game. One on that, I always think you should win after the bye week, no matter who you're playing. And a team like West Virginia, who the last few years I see is neck and neck with, And I still see it that way now until we can prove ourselves different. Neil Brown's on the hot seat for them, so he's got a lot to prove at this point in the season, especially. Maybe he won't even be there. Who knows? But I think it's a big game for both of us. I mean, we barely beat them last year in a nail-biting 23-20 game, but they got Graham Harrell, so a former Texas Tech great, leading their offense. So they're hoping he turns it around or maybe even takes over the whole thing. Who knows? They're hoping to rely on that JT Daniels transfer, though. Like, they're literally putting all their eggs in the basket with him and hoping he, as a great transfer from USC and Georgia, can turn their offense around and make them relevant to some existence and save Neil Brown's job, basically. I mean, their top two skill guys, Winston Wright and Letty Brown, they're gone. So they're replacing all that production. Letty Brown was really good for them the last couple of years. O-line's going to be good, but their defense, when I've looked at and seen, like, I think their defense is a revolving door of new guys and transfers, and they're trying to plug in puzzle pieces and figure that side out. And so I think it depends on what Graham Harrell and JT Daniels with Neil Brown can cook up and keep them in games or win games like 53-50. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I expect us to win this game big.
Yeah, this is definitely a must-win game for us. Most people are not very high on this West Virginia team, and I am most people there. Neil Brown is on the hot seat. Hopefully we get to see an interim Graham Harrell head coach, Red Raider great, coaching the West Virginia Mountaineers. I think that would be super cool. I don't know if we'll get to see that by the time we're playing them. But they're coming into Lubbock. We should get the win here. JT Daniels is at his third program for a reason. It hasn't worked at USC or Georgia. And I don't really see why it's going to work here. So I think we get the win pretty easily at home.
Y'all mind if I throw out a hot take here? I will go ahead and say I love Pat Mahomes, but I think Graham Harrell should have been first into the Ring of Honor before Pat Mahomes. Just personal opinion of mine.
I agree.
Emory, I have a question for you. Did JT Daniels get recruited by Graham Harrell to go to USC? Do you know the answer to that?
No, I don't think so. Because he was remember Kingsbury got hired briefly in 2019 before Harrell got hired as OC, and JT Daniels was already recruited before that point.
So I was going to say that if Graham Harrell had recruited him at USC and then brought him back to West Virginia, I'd feel a lot more sketchy about this game because Graham Harrell would have seeked him out in the past and known that he had something for him. I agree with to an extent with Christian. He's at his third program. There's a reason why. But I also think that with saying that, you have to look at the two programs that have been mentioned already. USC and Georgia are their top tier programs. So those programs wouldn't go out. USC wouldn't have recruited him in the first place, and Georgia wouldn't have would have not accepted him if they really thought that he was that much of a slouch. So I think that the one good thing that I can say came out of the Matt Wells era was that he just seemed to have West Virginia's number. The man, I'm pretty sure he went. I don't think he lost against West Virginia. So weirdly enough, that was the one team that couldn't break the Matt Wells code.
That's probably the worst stat for Neil Brown.
I would agree. I would agree 100%. So, but Neil Brown's seat is definitely hot, white hot, I would call it. And at this point in the year, like we've mentioned already, we're 6-7 games in now. You should really know what type of team you have at this point. And at this point, I think that Tech knows what they have. And I would go ahead and say that Tech wins this game by a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, looking at JT Daniels and what he was able to do, I actually disagree with the take that he really failed at Georgia or USC. I feel like USC, he had a little bit of underwhelming first couple of years, but it wasn't bad by any means. And Kellen Slavis ended up kind of overtaking him, and both of them ended up kind of out of the program. But then he went to Georgia, and his 5-game stretch at Georgia in 2020 after he took over from Stetson Bennett was arguably the best stretch that we've seen from any Big 12 quarterback this end of the season of anyone. I mean, he had over 10 yards per attempt, really efficient, led them to an undefeated end of the year, beat Cincinnati in the Sugar Bowl. All of that happened. And with all that said, we've seen West Virginia over the last few years has just been kind of a graveyard for quarterbacks. I mean, Austin Kendall transferred from Oklahoma, didn't go well there. Jared Dahey obviously had his shot, didn't work out for him, even though he was good at Bowling Green. You look at a couple of their backups, they all transferred out. Even Will Grier from Florida, dating back to the Holgorsen era, didn't have as much success as I feel like you might have expected coming into that program. So I think this is a team, especially under Neil Brown, that has struggled to have offensive success, and defensively, they don't have quite as much established talent to carry them like we've seen in years past. And this is the matchup that Tech has had success against in the past. I mean, there's so many reasons to be optimistic about this game. I think that it's a good opportunity after a bye, and I'm going to take Tech to win this one pretty easily.
All right, perfect. And let me, let me go ahead and take this moment. We had some technical difficulties. It's all on me. It's my fault, but I think we got it. Hopefully the audio came through and you were able to hear that. So my apologies to anybody. That is on me. But anyway, but I totally agree. And, you've got, West Virginia at home. I think they are going to contend for last place. I do. I think they're going to fight, Kansas and then one other school we'll talk about later as well for that last spot. And then, I think, West Virginia's in a tough spot. I don't know if, is his buyout going to prevent them from making a change, or are they just going to bite the bullet and go ahead? So it's going to be interesting to watch. I like Neil Brown. It's just not working in West Virginia, or at least it hasn't yet.
Does anyone else here think that it's possible that they're possibly having to replace Bob Huggins soon-ish? That maybe that could be a factor in them replacing Neil Brown sooner rather than later, or later rather than sooner?
I think Bob Huggins is on borrowed time at this point. If he had not had the storied career that he's had, he wouldn't have the leverage to be able to stay on. So for Huggins, I mean, he struggled the last 3 or 4 years, and I don't know if that plays into the decision making per se, because I mean, West Virginia certainly has some deep pockets if they need it. It's not like they're a cash trap program, but certainly, I mean, firing both coaches in 1 year would not be ideal. So we'll see how it goes, but certainly Huggins, I think this could be one of his last couple seasons, either A, because of his annoyance with the transfer portal, or B, just because he's simply struggled in recent memory.
Buyouts always seem to be a myth. If they can find a guy that they would rather replace Neil Brown with, then they will do that regardless of what's going on with Bob Huggins. Boosters will pony up if they find the right guy, but if the right guy's sitting there, that's really the key here.
Yeah, I don't know that Bob Huggins has anything to do with it, honestly, just because, as we've seen with college football all over the country, college football makes most of the money for all these schools. And so, honestly, I think even though Bob Huggins is a Hall of Fame coach, but Neil Brown is the one bringing in more of the money if they can win. So if he's not making the money and losing like he is, he's out regardless.
Yeah, I would be. It's definitely something to consider, as an administrative, as an whatever you want to call it, as a leader of West Virginia. But I don't know that you can, be held hostage just because you need to fire 2 coaches. I mean, I don't know. I think that the money will show up, so to speak, to do that. Saying that, I don't think it would happen though. I don't think they would fire both in the same calendar year. I think they would, let's say they want, okay, you know what, we're going to go ahead and let Neil Brown go. I think they'll look at basketball to at least be a stabilizing force for now. Okay, you know what, people love Bob, and they do love Bob Huggins. They really do. Even with the frustration that he can cause sometimes, it's kind of like the Bob Knott effect, right? It's you love him or you hate him type deal, and so there's frustration there. So I don't think it'll factor necessarily. If they need the money will be there. But you wonder if it's fiscally responsible, to get rid of Neil Brown. If you can't wait, you can't wait, right? You've got to make a change. But if there is some success, if there's some reason, I think it would be probably why, or I would expect them to probably keep him, until at least the buyout drops, or until he just, if he finishes last, I would say he's gone. I think they're going to. Having said all that, that's what anyway, we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so we are at 4-3. So we got a winning record after 7 games. I will take that all day. No, so Baylor, we got back-to-back home. Baylor comes to town. Are we going to overcome their strong front lines?
Yeah, Hefe, you already made a good point. They got 2 strong front lines and the Odin D line. They're coming off a surprising season last year, making the Big 12 champ game after a very disappointing first year of Aranda. But that's why I have a lot of faith in them, is he turned them around so fast and made them very good and solid that they worry me. I also think the fan base is going to make this game a way bigger game than Coach McGuire will, with the whole Baylor's coming to town and we took your coach, kind of that whole storyline. I don't think Coach McGuire is going to care. I think the fan base will make a big deal about it, which will be great because we'll pack the stadium for that. And this will be one of the first times we've had them at home in a long, long time. They have a tough schedule though, and even coming here is part of that. And I know we'll get into it later, but that's why I don't have them making Big 12 championship game, because they got a rough stretch of all their away games are very, very tough. Their top 3 receivers are gone this year. Blake Stephan's going to be their quarterback. And I don't know if their offense actually gets much better this year. They were middle of the pack in the Big 12 last year, and they still got this far, but I have faith in their coach to be able to coach up that defense. And so they still worry me enough to think they're going to win this game and not Texas Tech.
Yeah, this Baylor team, they're very strong in the trenches. Everywhere else, though, is a question mark. A lot of people are very high on quarterback Blake Shapen. Had a very strong showing in the Big 12 title game and strong showing in the Sugar Bowl game against Ole Miss. But I just don't see this Baylor team repeating the magic that they had last year. I know Aranda is arguably the best coach in this conference, but Baylor's not the type of program that could really go back-to-back as Big 12 titles. And we haven't really seen that. And I think there's going to be a lot of emotion here. A lot of our sideline was on that Baylor sideline last year. There's going to be a lot of emotion with our coaching staff. I think we get the win at home here. I really do.
I echo that sentiment. I also have Tech picked to upset Baylor here. Baylor has an interesting month of October schedule-wise. Yeah, the first Saturday of the month, they're at home against Oklahoma State. Then they have an off week, and then they're on the road at West Virginia. Then they have a home game at Kansas the following, or a home game against Kansas the following week. So I kind of think that we might catch Baylor napping a little bit in this one, coming off playing against what are most likely going to be the worst 2 teams in the Big 12, back to back, and then coming to Lubbock. I kind of think that there will be a lot of the possible animosity that was mentioned before. But I also think that they might be napping and kind of just expecting a win. Again, I'm praying I am once again here to pray for a night game in this one. I really hope that there's a night game because everyone knows that Halloween weekend at night in Lubbock, weird things happen at the Jones on Halloween weekend at nighttime. So again, I'm really hoping that this is a night game also. If it's a night game, I really do like our chances. I like our chances anyway, just because I think that we can exploit them. I'm not most people. I'm not super high on Blake Shapen yet. I haven't really seen him other than their bowl game really and the Big 12 championship. So it's really kind of up in the air. Some of their more major contributors are gone, and so I really want to say that Tech gets the W here.
I think the biggest thing for me is just looking at the trenches that they have. And offense, their offensive line was really good last year. Return a lot of experience there. This is by all accounts a unit you would expect to be tops of the Big 12, one of the top units in the nation. And defensively, again, their defensive line, their front seven, same thing with Oklahoma State. A lot of efficient pressure on the quarterback. And I think that that's just something that when you're looking at what Tech might struggle with this year, offensive line for Tech is a little bit of weakness on the right side. A lot of unknowns there. Defensively, the front seven, the linebackers are extremely new and raw. And outside of Tyree Wilson and obviously Jalen Hutchinson, Tony Bradford, the depth on the defensive line might not be able to hold up against a unit as strong as Baylor's offensive line. And so I think even with the skill positions having a lot of question marks, Baylor's a program that's kind of gone through skill positions in recent years. It's kind of been more of a plug and play thing. And so I have trust in Dave Aranda. I think this is a game that Tech really doesn't match up well against Baylor just because of the strength that they have in the trenches. And maybe something that in a year or two, Joey McGuire builds a team that is better suited to play Baylor. Because I think obviously that's one of the goals you have to have as a program is to be better in the trenches. But I just don't think the Tech is there quite yet. And this isn't one of those games I think it's going to be easy to pull off an upset. So I think I'm going to go with Baylor here. It's going to be a close game. I think you have the skill position talent to run with them. I just think the Baylor's strength in the trenches is going to win over a little bit.
All right, another tiebreaker. I'm extremely disappointed. None of you brought up Pat Mahomes is going to be in attendance at this game. Texas Tech is going to win. Pat Mahomes, the electricity in that stadium is going to be on fire. It will be sold out. People are coming to cheer on. And I think I said Pat Mahomes. Mrs. Mahomes, don't get mad at me. I apologize. It's Patrick Mahomes. I know his name. Pat's his dad. And the fact is that Baylor's been better than Tech, and Tech has played them close for several years in a row. You have the first or second Matt Wells game. We went there, and then we lost on that fake fumble, whatever they call it, illegal snap, which should have been a fumble. Tech should have won that game, right? We almost got it to overtime last year, and they played in the championship game. I don't know, and of course I haven't done a deep, dive into their roster to see, if they've upgraded or if they done. I know their, D-line and O-line are stout, based upon just, the history and then just whatever, scouts and whoever, what, the pros are talking about. So, but you have to, I just have to consider the fact that Tech has played Baylor close, even when they've had, quote unquote superior teams, or at least they've had better records than Tech, right? And so, based on the Patrick Mahomes favor, I'm gonna pick Tech to pull it off. This is my this is my upset. We'll talk about that later, but that's what I have. So the official Taco and Tech. Texas Tech football record prediction is 5-3 through 8 games. We are drinking the joy juice. I am counting on the Patrick Mahomes factor to play in there. All right. We got the Cactus Bowl. We are headed to Fort Worth. We are facing I forgot his last name. The Brian Brand. What's going to happen in Fort Worth?
Yeah, this is a big game just because of all the Twitter fuss over the summer. I mean, their athletic director started the stir of the pot with the ticket sales because he knows they can't sell them themselves, and we have to sell out their stadium for them in football and basketball. And then that started something with their assistant coach, whatever his name was. And so Tech fans are going to be there regardless, is the point. I don't care how they're going to try to get their tickets, but they're going to be there. And it's going to be great. And I don't have a lot of faith in this TCU roster and what they've done. Y'all have already talked bad about their quarterbacks, Max Duggan. And yeah, I mean, they don't have a great guy at taking snaps and holding the ball and throwing it. But you got to remember what they did to us here last year. And that was a very demoralizing loss, watching us getting ran all over 52-31, and two of their running backs had over 150 yards, and we couldn't touch a soul on them. Now I think Coach McGuire and that defense, they're going to have a much better game plan for that kind of stuff and adapt, which I think Matt Wells and the staff did not do very well on the field and during games. So I think that is a plus for us. But Sonny Dykes replacing longtime head coach Gary Patterson, who we forgot to mention is on the Texas staff as a coach. It's very weird to see pictures of him in that color and a visor of that. So he's going to sweat through that burnt orange very terribly this upcoming season. I hope he has multiple shirts to change into at halftime. But back to TCU, yeah. I mean, their only guy I'm worried about, they have a really good top receiver in Quentin Johnson. And that's about all I'm worried about. Nothing else scares me about them, honestly. So yeah, easy dub to me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dustin. This roster isn't great. They had a coaching change in the offseason, bring in Sonny Dykes. You have a lot of question marks all over this roster. Obviously, we know this show's official stance on Max Duggan. He's not very good. We can see Chandler Morris in there too. I don't know if that's much of an upgrade or not. That we'll just have to see there. But this is definitely going to be a home game for Tech. We know what the AD Donati did and shutting down ticket sales for single game to keep Tech fans out. It's not going to work. It never does. Didn't work in Austin. It's not going to work here. It's just going to end up with a bunch of rowdy people wearing red in the stands, and hopefully we get to be one of those people. And then you have the whole drama with Brian Carrington, the recruiting coordinator, just trashing West Texas when he knows that his boosters can't pony up the way ours can, and getting the NIL deals that our players deserve. And I don't know why you have to trash West Texas and say you can't start a family or a business there. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And it was just great to see our Red Raider fan base step up on Twitter against this guy and band against the hate and band together. I mean, it's just nothing like it. I mean, that Cactus Day was one of my favorite days of all time, just because of everything going on. So easy dub. Don't even have to think about it. We're coming out with a win at the West Texas city of Fort Worth.
I agree. I think Tech gets an easy dub in this one. I always seem to forget that Texas is pretty good at poaching athletic department talent from TCU. People forget that Del Conte was the AD at TCU before he was at Texas, and so they kind of live in TCU's athletic department. I guess you could say TCU is a farm system for Texas athletics, which makes a whole lot of sense as to why they're not very good. But I would go out and say, Max Duggan is not good. Their best running back, Evans, left. He transferred to Ole Miss. So their running game really doesn't scare me at all. I would agree with the aspect of Johnson at wide receiver, but like Dustin mentioned, other than that, there's really not a whole lot that jumps off the page at me. I think it's an advantage for Tech that whether they like to admit it or not, this is also a first-year head coach at TCU. Not in the same way as Joey McGuire by any means, but I think that Sonny Dykes is probably very aware. I mean, he's coached Power 5 football before. He did at Cal, not very successfully, but Cal is definitely a different beast than TCU and different than SMU by a lot of means. But being from West Texas myself and getting trashed on, my family getting trashed on by the TCU recruiting coordinator, that was always a good show. But I really didn't realize the big differences being from West Texas and then moving to where I am now in Dallas. I live right down the road from SMU, and you don't really grasp the differences unless you're from the area or you live in the area. And that is a huge difference between SMU and TCU athletics. And I hope that Sonny Dykes remembers just how different Power 5 football is than Group of 5 football. Because even at TCU, and even though TCU and SMU aren't even the top 3 schools in their own markets, it's definitely going to be a big step up to go over to TCU and coach there. So again, as I said, I think Tech gets an easy dub here. I really don't see anything that really affects me. For the record, I will throw out another hot take. I would agree, and I think that Chandler Morris is starting this game by this point in the season. I think that they've had enough of Max Duggan at this point, and I think that Chandler Morris plays this entire game against Texas Tech.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a shout out to another Hub City Homers member, Michael Macon. Was on the Max Duggan hate train before it was cool to hate Max Duggan, and look where that is now. I'm going to say Chandler Morris is starting this game, and that scares me more than Max Duggan starting this game. But TCU still has quite a void of talent at the skill position compared to a lot of the rest of the Big 12 and what Tech will face. So if there's a road game that I'm confident in picking for Tech, it's definitely the TCU game. I mean, look, TCU Tech fans and Tech in general has been rent-free in their head this entire year, even further back, to be honest. I mean, we've seen the whole Cactus thing. We've seen all the West Texas hate. And look, at the end of the day, their stadium's still going to be at least 50% full with red. I'm confident of that. This is a game and a stadium that over the last decade, Tech has had generally a lot of success in. I mean, they won in 2016, they won in 2018, they won in 2012. Don't talk about 2014. But all that withstanding, this is a game Tech should win. Last year was not ideal, but certainly I think that was a little bit of an outlier game. And yeah, I mean, TCU just doesn't have the talent on paper to really scare me too much. And with all the momentum around the program, this is the exact type of game that Tech is bound to win, and I'm going to pick them to beat TCU in this one.
All right, we are unanimous. I agree with my man Christian that I was doing nothing. I had a smile on I think for 24 hours straight. I think I was smiling in my sleep, just dreaming of cactus emojis, just filling my Twitter timeline. And I'm looking at it and I'm dying. My wife doesn't know. She's like, "What are you even doing?" I'm like, "Look at my screen." I'm like, "What do you see?" And I just scroll, and she's like, "What's up with all the cactus?" I'm like, "Let me tell you." And so y'all have laid out the points. I have nothing to add. I just and honestly, I think that because of the team, they're obviously they're practicing. They don't know, and then Joe McGuire tells them, "Hey, y'all need to send out a cactus tweet," and they're like, "What?" And so they do, and then they see, and then they do the backstory and they see it. So I think now that they've seen what's going. They've seen the fan base and their reaction to turn in something that was intended to be negative into a positive, and I think they're going to rally. I think to a certain, the quote unquote, they've circled this game. They haven't really circled the game, but I think when it gets there, they're going to remember the Cactus. I think it's going to be a rallying cry, and I agree. I think it's going to be relatively easy to say that this is probably definitely the easiest road game on Tech's schedule. So I am right there with you. So Texas Tech, at this point, is going 6-3, based upon our highly scientific and totally proven method here on Taco and Tech. So we are bowl eligible, and we have 3 games to go. The fan base would go nuts if this happened. Okay, next we come back home. We face the Kansas Jayhawks. What do we got?
Always a huge game against Kansas. Wait, never mind. We're not Texas. They should be more worried about it than we are, but I'm not worried about them like usual. I do think their coach, Lance Leipold, is doing a great job in trying to turn them around. But I think the biggest thing in this game, in this matchup, is that we stole one of their best coaches back to our staff in Emmett Jones. I always thought that was a huge loss from the Cliff staff. I thought he had a great eye for talent, and then his development of those wide receivers was amazing. You saw guys go from 0 to first or second team all Big 12 in one season with him, and they were never like 3 or 4 star guys. They were these 1-2 JUCO transfer type guys. And so I thought that was a great hire for Kansas over the past few years. And then I thought that was an amazing hire back to get Emmett Jones back to Texas Tech, and to help our receiving core and just our overall development. And so, of course, I'm not worried about Kansas. They have a good trio of running backs, and that's about it. And it should be an easy walk in the park.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about here. I mean, we're talking about Kansas football. I mean, I like what Lance Leipold's doing, and I like their quarterback, Jalen Daniels, but at the end of the day, it's still Kansas. I mean, we're talking about football, not basketball. I obviously think it's funny that Kansas is playing Duke this year in football. I just think it's one of the funnier matchups this year that we'll see. It's like the just bottom of the barrel football, Power 5 teams there. But yeah, easy dub for Tech. Nothing else to say.
I'm totally going to watch that Duke-Kansas game.
Literally, Kansas is winning that. I don't
yeah.
think Kansas still beat Duke, but that's about it.
I have Tech winning this one, big. I will say, I like the sentiment about Emmett Jones coming back. I also think that Emmett Jones bringing Jordan Brown with him is a huge get for Texas Tech. I think Jordan Brown's going to be a huge playmaker for the receiving core at Tech. I think he's going to actually surprise a lot of people with just how many targets he gets this year. I kind of think he's going to be one of the guys that no one's really paying attention to starting out this year. And I think he's going to have some big time stats. I really do. I'm just going to go ahead and add, I really do like what Lance Leipold's doing. I saw today that Kansas is applying for permits to going ahead and getting that big upgrade in their athletic facilities for football. Not as big, near as big as Tech's, obviously, but it's still going to be an upgrade for them, which with what they've done the past, ever since they had Mangino as the coach, I'm shocked that they're upgrading anything. So it's really nice to see that they're actually putting forth an effort and not just scrapping the whole thing. I do think Tech wins big, but I would like for them to pay attention to the game because I really just don't think I could handle anything like what Texas is going through happening to Tech. So I do think Tech wins big, but we don't need to overlook them by any means.
Yeah, 2 years ago, Tech almost lost in the season finale to Kansas at home. So
I believe they lost 3 years ago, didn't they? Also, that was the first for Matt Wells' first year. We lost.
Yeah, they lost
Lawrence, didn't we?
37-34 on the road in Lawrence.
Yeah,
but then at home, at home in the season finale, a Kansas team that didn't win a game, if I remember correctly, that year. So anything can happen. And as much as we like to clown on Texas, anyone is capable of losing to Kansas if they try hard enough. But I've got hope that Joey McGuire isn't going to be the type of coach that lets that happen. I certainly think this Kansas roster is coming together nicely. Like I said, I have them beating Duke this year. They're not the worst Power 5 team, but they're close to it. And we'll see. I mean, I think Lance Leipold is doing a great job building the program. It's going to take a little bit more time, but hopefully for the Jayhawks, they end up building something that can at least be competitive in the Big 12. But this isn't going to be the year. I think this is a good opportunity for Tech to continue building. Again, one of the easier games you're going to face all year. And as long as nothing goes too bad, you should be able to walk out of Jones AT&T Stadium with another win.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Kansas will not finish last in the Big 12 this year. That is my hot, I guess, I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but that's my take. They will not win this game against Texas Tech, but they will not finish last. I think what Lance Leopold is doing, I think it's highly respectable, highly commendable. I think that he, if they don't lock him up, or at least try to, I think they're foolish. Kansas just even getting to a bowl game would be a huge accomplishment here, but Kansas will not come into our house and win. So I definitely agree with you there, but I don't have them last in the Big 12, but we'll talk about that later. All right, Texas Tech is 7-3. The fan base is gonna absolutely be bananas. We are headed to Iowa State. What's gonna happen when we face the Cyclones?
I feel like I need to start changing my predictions to tank our overall outcome since we're already at 7-3. But
Drink the Joey juice.
Going to Ames, Iowa is going to be tough. I mean, it always is. But they had a massive overhaul there this year. I mean, surprisingly, Matt Campbell's in his 7th year. I feel like it hasn't been that long for him, but he's done a great job there turning them around. They had a really disappointing year last year, but they pretty much lost all their offensive stars, which is why they were supposed to be so good last year. I mean, Brock Purdy's gone. Breece Hall's on the Jets. Their 2 massive tight ends are gone. I mean, they had a huge, huge overhaul of experience and good players on that offense. And how do they replace that? And so, all I know, I mean, Xavier Hutchinson is going to be a great wide receiver for them, but everything else, production-wise, is a huge, huge question mark for me. Their defense was really good last year as well, but a big overhaul there. They will still have a great pass rush with Will McDonald being a first-team preseason All-American or Big 12 guy. But I see us pulling off a huge upset here myself, just because of the huge overhaul they have in their roster. I don't see them like Oklahoma State having the depth of talent stocked up to make that overhaul manageable, like Oklahoma State kind of will for their defense. So I have us pulling off an upset here in Ames.
Yeah, there are a lot of question marks surrounding this Iowa State Cyclones team. I'm very glad that we don't have to see Breece Hall, Charlie Kolar, Brock Purdy, and these guys again. I mean, these guys just ate our lunch every time we saw them. Matt Campbell's done an excellent job at Iowa State. He's their best coach in program history, and it probably isn't even close. If this game was at any time earlier in the season, or if it was in Lubbock, I would have us taking the win. But I just think this game being late November in the cold up in Ames, Iowa, I think we're going to take the loss here. I know Hunter Deckers, their quarterback, is a question mark, but he was highly recruited, was a 4-star. They're apparently very high on him. So I just think, just due to the weather being late in the year in Ames, Iowa, I think we take the loss.
Unfortunately, I agree. I do think Tech takes the loss here, and it's not because of anything in particular, other than I'm real high on Decker as well. I think their quarterback coming in is going to be probably their best quarterback recruit possibly ever. I think Will McDonald is going to line up against whoever our right tackle is and is going to make them hate their life for about 2.5 hours. And I just don't know if our offensive line can rotate anyone over to, accommodate that at all. Again, I'll throw out another hot take. I guess I feel like I'm just full of those. In Matt Campbell's last season at Iowa State, he'll win this game. I think Matt Campbell Jets from Iowa State after this year. I just think that they're going to be too many teams that come open with lucrative offers. I know that he's a big Iowa State guy, but I just for some reason I just feel like he's going to take that Nebraska job when it inevitably comes open after October 1st, and Scott Frost buyout goes down by half. So. I want to say that I am also really glad that we don't have to deal with Breece Hall and Brock Purdy and Kolar anymore, because that was never fun. But I do think that, in all honesty, we've all thrown these upsets, but I think that this is definitely a game that Tech should win. But like has been mentioned, because of the cold, because of possibly it's an 11 a.m. kick. It could very easily go the wrong way for us. And I think that this is a game that we drop that we should possibly win, a game that we're probably picked to win by most, but we end up dropping it.
See, I think with Iowa State, the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is just the amount of positional overhaul, like you guys have mentioned. I mean, you lose Breece Hall, who really was their workhorse for 3 years. You lose Brock Purdy, who had his inconsistencies, but if you look over the course of his time as a starter, it's hard to argue against him being the best quarterback outside of Seneca Wallace in Iowa State history. And I think he had a dynamic ability and improbability that it's going to be hard to necessarily replace that. You lose your tight ends as well. And this is a team that Tech had a lot of success against last year when it came to passing through the air. You saw what Donovan Smith was able to do. It's going to be in the cold in November in Ames, and that's sketchy. We've seen that go very wrong for Tech in the past, but I think on the merits of Tech being able to sustain a high-level passing game in last year's matchup, and the fact that it's not like we haven't seen Tech have success in cold weather in the past, and the fact that this team has SaRodorick Thompson, Taj Brooks, and good run defense in theory, I feel confident in saying that the cold weather might not be as big of a factor as some people let on, but certainly we'll have to see. It's hard to get a good gauge on that. And I'm going to pick Tech to win this one. I think it's a good matchup against Iowa State. I feel like Matt Campbell might have maybe stalled out a little bit the last couple of years. Certainly last season did not live up to expectations. And this team doesn't have quite as much natural talent on paper as what we've seen in years past. So I'll take Tech to win this one. I don't feel great about it, but I do think that this is one of the games that they should win on paper. And I hope they're good enough to win. I think it's going to be really just down to how well the team can react to the environment, and that's kind of tough to predict ahead of time.
Oh, it's absolutely tough to predict ahead of time, but that's what we're doing, right? So, again, we come to me being the tiebreaker, and I am going to, you know what? Let me say this first. Matt Campbell is probably the most overrated coach in the Big 12, not named Steve Sarkisian. So that is my hot take, if that's a hot take. I'm not convinced yet that he is the great coach that the national media wants to paint him as. We'll find out, right? 'Cause this is one of the few years he won't have Brock Purdy, and I was very happy to draft Breece Hall in my fantasy football draft because I knew that Tech was no longer going to face him, and so we'll see. I think it's a winnable game. I'm going to go ahead as the tiebreaker, and the fact that we already have a 7-3 record, I'm gonna err on the side of reason. Being Joe McGuire's first year as head coach, and I'm going to go ahead and say a loss And so unfortunately we will only have one win away from home based upon our highly scientific and proven method here. But we will drop the game in Ames, and we'll be 7-4 at this point.
You're staying in Cyclone Larry's good graces there.
Yeah.
That's right. We have made, that's a good point. I feel like Texas Tech has made more friends this offseason with other fan bases than probably any time in our history. Not that we're a bad fan base, we're fun, but just like any other fan base, we do like to poke the bear and make fun of other fan bases, but and maybe it was the Big 12 versus Pac-12 kind of rivalry that kind of did it, but I feel like a lot, and I think the Cactus did some of it too. I think people saw that and were like, okay, you know what? Just don't mess with Texas Tech Twitter. It's just not worth it. Just leave them alone. There's no reason for them to use any kind of motivation against us. Let's just befriend them. I'm just kind of playing my own head game here, but I feel like a lot of Cyclone fans, and then I kind of made for a lot of K-State fans, especially the Cyclones and K-State, which is weird because they're actually rivals against each other in Farmageddon. So it's kind of weird that's kind of where we've gone. And then somewhat even West Virginia, even though I hate West Virginia, I freaking hate playing them there. I mean, I like playing them, but I hate the game just because I don't know, it seems like there's always some kind of extra curricular activity, some extra tactics, some extra head game they're trying to put on us, and then sometimes I feel like it worked, but Henry Columbia was undefeated against West Virginia, FYI. Take that, Mountaineers. Okay, so we are 7-4 after the Cyclone game. We got our final game. We are coming home. OU is coming to town. Joey McGuire has already predicted that we will beat OU and then tear that south end zone down. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, I doubt that's going to happen. I mean, even with all the overhaul at Oklahoma this past year, I don't see us having quite the roster to hold our own against them. I mean, we all know Lincoln Riley ditched and went to USC and took, I don't know what the exact numbers are on the transfers with him, but Brent Venables comes in, highly touted D coordinator from Clemson that everybody wanted for so long. And then they brought in Jeff Lebby from Ole Miss, who I think is a great OC hire for him. We'll see how much of his own stuff he kind of takes from when he was at Ole Miss and what he wants to do and what Venables kind of wants to do. That'll be an interesting dynamic. Their O-line's very rebooted, and they got Dylan Gabriel coming in from UCF. But I kind of see this as, I mean, they're kind of the biggest question mark of the Big 12, I think, because they've been basically sitting on the throne for a long time, for the last decade or more. And now they're kind of questionable with all these transfers going out. They still have a really good roster, but kind of make it similar to when Matt Rule left Baylor and they brought in Aranda, and how is that going to go, And obviously they have a better roster. I think should do way better, but I don't know. I don't know if they can pull it out throughout the whole year like they have easily in the past few years. But I don't see us being able to hold our weight quite yet. And hopefully we get one more shot at them, but this might be our last one. But they probably get us to end the season.
Yeah, I'm very high on this OU team. They really didn't lose a whole lot of talent when Red Raider Lincoln Riley left them in the dust and went to USC. I mean, they still have Marvin Mims on the outside. This guy's going to be a first-round pick this year, most likely. They brought in Dylan Gabriel, who's coming in with Jeff Lebby. They're reuniting from their UCF days. They were excellent there. And the biggest problem with this team under Lincoln Riley was the defense. Now you bring in arguably the best defensive mind in college football. Brent Venables was everybody's prize hire for probably the last 5 years in the coaching carousel. Everybody's trying to get this guy and couldn't pry him away from Clemson. Well, now OU has. They've got a lot of talent. They're going to be very strong in the trenches and the offensive line. I think they should be able to run the football very well, as they always do. But this is a game in November in the Jones, likely going to be a night game. It's going to be Thanksgiving weekend. I think this game is going to be scary close. I do think we have a realistic chance at winning this game to say goodbye to the South end zone. I still am going to predict an OU win here, but I think this could be one of those spicy games where it could potentially ruin OU's chances at a college football playoff berth.
I would agree with that. I do have OU winning this. I also have them winning very closely as well, mostly because this is a game for OU that's not normal because it's after Bedlam. They're either going to be riding high and on a juggernaut train towards the Big 12 championship, or they're going to be pissed off that they just lost to Oklahoma State at home in Bedlam. So I don't think Tech has a favorable matchup here regardless of what happens the prior week in Bedlam. This is the last game of the regular season, so by then this team will be churning on all cylinders offensively and defensively as well. I agree with all the sentiments that have been said also already. Jeff Lebby is one of the best offensive minds in college football, I would say, and Brent Venables that, like Christian mentioned, has been, a lot of teams, a lot of programs white whale over the past couple off seasons. So OU has set themselves up really nicely to rebound from the loss of Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams and others. But I just don't see Tech winning this. I wish we could. It would be a great end to the season, a great way to send out that South end zone. But I just think OU is going to be too much. My personal belief is that they are going to be coming off a Bedlam win against Oklahoma State in Norman, and that they're just going to be on a steamrolling train towards the Big 12 championship. So I think OU wins closer than people think. I think it ends up being about 7 points, roughly, possibly 10. But I think OU still comes away with the win here.
I'm going to take Tech. I think this is the one game this season, all the way at the end of this, going to be the end of the South end zone. You're gonna take it all the way to the end of the season. It's really the first time OU ends a season outside of Bedlam in as long as I can remember. And you could argue that's a bad thing because they're gonna have the result of Bedlam kind of playing on their minds, but also the emotional drainage of that game and that rivalry, particularly if it's a high stakes game and you have two teams that are fighting for it. I mean, that's something that these players aren't used to necessarily having to go straight back into battle right after that game. And so I think that Tech could possibly catch them napping. It's possible, but I think the bigger thing is just like, this is the point of the season. You're going to have a full season worth of tape. You're going to have a new staff that at this point should be fully gelled. Oklahoma is a team that obviously still has a lot of talent. You still have Marvin Mims on the outside. You still have Theo West coming back. You still have Dylan Gabriel coming in, which have Levy as offensive coordinator. But there's some holes. I think the trenches aren't quite as strong as what we've seen in years past, particularly the offensive line. I mean, I remember back to last season, the running game over the course of the season had its ups and downs, which was uncharacteristic for OU in recent memory. And so I think that's reason for optimism. They're also replacing a few starters there. And then on the secondary, again, it's something that they kind of had their ups and downs last season. We saw times like against Texas where they really struggled. Again, in that Tech game where they still dominated, they had their issues against Donovan Smith once he came in. So I think there's reason to be optimistic. I'm not really picking this off of pure logic, but more just on the sense that I just can't see Joey McGuire coming out at the end of year one without having a signature win. I think this is the time to do it. I think this is a good matchup for them. And look, it's November. It's Lubbock. It's probably going to be a night game. Crazy things happen. I've got Tech winning.
Jump around 5 is going to happen. I think it's 5. I forget. I don't know if y'all remember the jump around saga from a few years ago. I'm using my veto powers. I am writing this down as a win. Texas Tech is going to beat OU as Joe McGuire predicted, and then they're going to tear down the end zone immediately right after the game. Okay, maybe not right after the game, but the next day. But it's gonna, you know what? And I am actually using logic, or at least some logic, because Venables is a first-year head coach as well. Now, do they? I think there's some match. We've got there's some matchups that Tech's can exploit, and so this is the last game of the year. There's no reason for any tricks to be held. Like Zach Kitley will have his full season to he'll know his team by then. Obviously, they'll know now. Obviously, OU will know as well. So I'm not disputing that, but the fact, Mason Tharp, I think he is a matchup problem for anybody in the Big 12, which is why I'm leaning more toward a higher record than maybe the consensus. Most people have us 5-7, 7-5. I think that's pretty much the range of most. That seems like a realistic, expectation. Probably fighting for a bowl or going to a bowl game in his first year. I think the fan base will be ecstatic for that. I think that's fine. I'm leaning toward we're getting to 8-4 territory. If we go 8-4, if we beat OU for that last game, Joey McGuire is your Big 12 Coach of the Year. I'm calling it right now. That's what's going to happen. We're going to beat Texas and OU for maybe in the same season for the first time and maybe ever. I'd have to look. I can't remember if we've even done that. And I'm just using veto. Me and Emery, we got you. We're drinking the Joey juice. We believe it. He called it. He called his shot, and it's gonna happen. I have no other reason. I'm just calling it. Don't question my judgment. We are 8-4. I think by this time, Mason Tharp and Baylor Cupp are gonna be legit threats. I think they're gonna be working to the offense. I think they're gonna be a matchup problem for almost any team. And there is there is a lot of uncertainty. Like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty. There is no definitive number one team. Baylor is kind of projected based upon their lines, but really they have question marks. We don't know for sure how Sharpen's gonna react. We know the Spencer Sanders situation, and then their defense are they going to be up there? I don't think. I think OU is going to have a rough season. They have a first-year head coach. They've got to adjust to the new culture and what's being built, and it won't be easy. And I'm drinking the Joey juice. I just am. Texas Tech's going 8-4. We're going to a bowl that probably puts us, third-ish in the Big 12. Maybe 4, somewhere right in that range, and I think that's fine. I think we would be more than ecstatic if that happened. I think the fan base would be jumping over the moon, or whatever exciting phrase you want to use. So we will mark us down as an official 8-4 prediction on Joe McGuire's first season, along with the Big 12 Coach of the Year prediction. All right, we have run pretty long. We'll just go over this real quick. Who is your Big 12 winner and your last place team? Or I guess champion.
Winner, I'm still going to take Oklahoma, and last is Kansas. I know it sounds very cliche to say, but that's what I'm going to take. Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State in the Big 12 champ game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the boring pick as well. I'm going to go with Oklahoma Big 12 champion, Kansas last place. I do think OU will beat Kansas State in the Big 12 title game.
Stop me if I'm a broken record here. I have OU winning the Big 12, and I have Kansas in last place. However, I'll go with a third different pick. I have OU beating Baylor in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, I'm gonna take for the regular season champion. I'll take Baylor over Oklahoma. I think it's gonna be Baylor's season. I think Oklahoma with a new coaching staff connects a lot of new pieces. Might drop a game or two, a game or so early in the season, and then obviously I picked them to lose a Tech at the end of the season. That gives them 2 losses. I feel like Baylor can maybe get through with just one or have a tie. But then in the conference championship game, I'm gonna go with Oklahoma to win that one. So kind of evening it out. And then for last place, look, I wish I could pick any other team, but I just think Kansas still has a little ways to go to be out of the bottom of the Big 12. But hopefully a team like TCU ends up down there with Max Duggan and their anti-cactus society. I think we all wish that that's the case, but for now I'll pick Kansas, but we all know I hope TCU ends up in last.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going with the Wildcats. I'm saying Kansas State is going to beat Baylor in the championship game, and I think West Virginia will be the last place team. I think it'll be TCU, Kansas, and then West Virginia last. That is my prediction. And of course, Kansas State, Baylor, and then anybody else you can pretty much throw in there. Tech's going to be around, based upon the 8-4 record, probably fourth. Most likely, there's probably a 10-win team, an 11-win team, and then maybe a 9-win team. So we'll be right there, or maybe another 8-4 team, and then maybe we have or they have the tiebreaker. Whatever. It doesn't matter. We're just projecting here, of course, without looking at the record of each individual team. So there we go. We are pushing 2 hours. I will stop there. I appreciate you hanging in. We had some technical difficulties to start this thing. We started later. Totally my fault. I will own that. But I think we got it fixed for the most part. Dustin, Christian, Emery, Jack, I appreciate you. There's been I would be remiss not to at least mention it. Obviously we had a tough weekend for me. My dad was a great Red Raider. He loved Texas Tech. It was important. I followed his footsteps, and graduated as well. I've got 2 degrees. And so it was important. I had this kind of scheduled ahead of time, and I wanted to continue. Kind of part of the healing process, so to speak. Life doesn't stop just because something happens. So, we've got a tough few more days to finish out the services, and then life will continue. So I appreciate your support. I really do. It was important for me to share that on Twitter. I just had to get it out, and I appreciate you guys agreeing to do this. It's definitely awkward, but I wanted to say my dad was he was great. He loved Texas Tech, just like I do, and like any good Red Raider, he hated Texas. So it's tough, but life goes on, and we'll move on, and I'll continue. And so I've got a kind of an ending slide. It was a pleasure that I was able to take my dad to go see the basketball game against Texas, and when we beat Country Club, and that's kind of I think that was our last game that we went to together. So it's pretty awesome that was that game for sure. And so we'll end there, and we'll get this uploaded. And I appreciate you guys very much. This was fun. Maybe longer than we intended, but that's okay. We got a lot of good information, a lot of good thoughts, and y'all were well prepared. And I pushed through. So we will do this again. Thank you so much. And, man, I hope you all get some rest and get a good night.
Thanks, Hefe. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you
Hefe.
so much, Jude.
Thank you very much.